All right. Well, welcome back to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. Here with a special guest, Andrew Wynn with Ascend. How are we doing, Andrew?
Hey, Elliot, I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How are you today?
Good, good. We were just out, about a month ago now at Indie Tech, Jason Cass's first year conference, and it was pretty fun, man. We had a good time, didn't we?
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to see so many folks in person and get
Yeah,
together and break bread. It was really great.
yeah, it was good. And that dinner at what's the name of that place? Elmo's in is it Elmo's in uh
The St. Elmo's, yeah, the,
yeah,
the
St.
spiciest
Elmo's.
horseradish I've ever had.
Holy cow. Yeah. If anybody out there is looking to have an out of body experience with horseradish, you should probably go to St. Elmo's in
That is the
Indianapolis.
spot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, everybody probably knows who you are, or most folks know about Ascend, but maybe give us your background, what you guys are doing at Ascend, and where that's going in the future.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. And again, thanks for having me. It's always great to be able to share with folks in the industry. My background, I'm the co-founder of Ascend. Ascend is my second company that I've started. The first one we sold to a carrier, which is kind of how we, got into the world of insurance and learned the behind the scenes sort of how the sausage is made and how all these things really work. Which is I can talk a little bit more about that. Before that, before our first business, my same co-founder and I, Praveen, who's still at Ascend, is obviously a key part of Ascend. And I started, Shelter. Before that, we actually worked at Instacart together when it was a really small startup. And the only reason I say that is it's a special week for us and Instacart. This week
Yeah.
of our recording, since Instacart IPO'd on Tuesday, so it was awesome to see that next
Yeah.
chapter begin for the company where we were. We weren't there for the very first chapter. We weren't the founders, but pretty early on, and it was cool. It's cool to see that grow, and just an awesome experience.
Yeah. I did see that article that talked about a lot of the folks that came out of Instacart in the early days was pretty interesting. I know they mentioned you in there, so yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a little bit of a kind of, I'd say that's where we sort of cut our teeth on all things tech and startups. So we owe a huge amount of gratitude to those experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little bit just about who Ascend is and how you guys are slightly different, because I think you do approach premium financing and agency bill and stuff like that slightly differently. That would be good just for everybody to think about. At least it was for me and talking with Chris and your team and such. So maybe start there and kind of how when you started the company, what problem were you trying to solve, and then how has it evolved to where it's at today?
Totally. So, Ascend is a tool that for agencies today, we aspire to do a lot more, but for agencies today, we make agency bill as easy as direct bill. And there's a whole, it's kind of a weird thing to say. And well, why did you decide to do that? And I'll share that full context. But we started Ascend after, as I mentioned, selling our first company to a carrier. And the carrier that we sold to was an insurtech carrier that actually, they were an MGA when we sold. They bought a carrier. They owned a captive agency. They had thousands of independent agents appointed. They also went direct. And so there was kind of every mess of insurance, or rather every type of insurance under one roof, which caused a huge amount of confusion and mess.
Well, I can
And so
imagine.
it was in that company that we realized, gosh, all this time and effort that we're spending just trying to like make the business work is actually really hurting the things that are really the core function of a carrier, right? Which is underwriting and working with distribution.
Yeah.
And so we thought, okay, we'd seen on the inside, the way to insurance is we love the business, we love the people, we love, what insurance provides to the communities, to our communities and to the financial system at large. And so we wanted to stay in the industry and help help the industry. But we knew that wasn't doing sort of what InsurTech 1.0 was doing around saying, hey, carriers are really bad at, they're really outdated, so we're going to build a new carrier. Or, hey, agents don't need to exist. We're going to just go direct to consumer. We saw how misguided that was from the inside. And so we thought the way to enable and empower and grow this industry, make it more efficient and sustainable, is not to come in and say we're going to replace these people who are really, really good at what they do. Carriers are so good at underwriting, right? Yeah. Agents are so good at distribution and risk management. Like, there's no way that we could even imagine being better than that, right? And so we said, we don't want to do that, but we want to enable these folks. So what are these things that people are spending time on that aren't in service of underwriting for a carrier and risk management and selling for an agency? And there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? You know it, you live it. But one of the things that came up time and time and time again, and we also lived, on the inside of this business, was how money moves and how funds flows and accounting and reconciliation and all the sort of administrative tasks associated with payments, billing, accounting, and insurance. It's very unique to insurance. It's not like how other businesses necessarily run their finance operations, given the industry. And it's critical, right? You can't run a business and not get paid. So it's critical, but no one is going to be the best agency by being the best at billing. No one is going to be the best carrier by being the best at, managing customer payments, right? Yeah. But those are really critical things. So that's how we started Ascend. We said, let us help with that thing so you can focus on the things that matter, most to you and are your unique, capabilities.
Yeah.
Sorry, long spiel on that.
No, I think that's great background, just because it helps frame in how you got to where you guys are at today, and thought it was important too to provide that delineation, because it took me actually a little bit to even pick that up with Ascend, that like I'd been told that by like Chris and team that you guys are focused on making that agency bill so much better, but your mind automatically goes to like premium financing, and that's just what we're used to, is like that was somewhat of either agency bill or premium finance. And so taking what is typically a pain point for an agency, an E&O exposure, all of those things, and making it as simple as direct bill, but then also keeping control. That's one of the things that I think gets lost, is like when you turn it over to direct bill, you lose control, right? To provide the experience you want to your client. And having a solution that you can use to create that seamless experience, but control it to your client through agency bill is huge. Because some of these carriers, at the end of the day, they're watching their back too from a billing perspective. And so, we had a client just recently that their check got lost in the mail. Why they were still mailing a check, I don't know. But they were dealing with their bank, trying to figure it out. They literally called us a week ahead of the date that the bill was due. It was like, don't let them cancel us. Like, don't let them send out notice of cancellations and all the stuff, because it's a contractor, all that. Like, we're on it. And we got a hold of everybody at the carrier we could, but guess what went out? Notice of cancellation. Yeah, of it was so frustrating, because like they were on top of it. It wasn't like it was they weren't going to pay or they were late. It was just stuff happens. So we didn't have any control over that process, right? What's that?
Totally. That's a perfect example of the types of problems that we aspire to solve at Ascend. And sure, maybe that's not like an agency bill problem today, but longer term, we want to be able to sort of build solutions and work with everyone across the industry, because sure, that carrier is doing direct bill, but it's still your problem, right? Yeah, you had to deal with that. And think about and so maybe we can help the carriers to help you, because no matter what, like the amount of time and effort and unpleasant experience that was spent on that, the customer wasn't happy, they're dealing with all this stuff. You're calling the carrier, you probably having your team deal with it, the customer's calling you. God knows how many people were interacting on email threads inside of the carrier, like, for what?
Yeah.
Like, nothing, right? There's $0 of value created. Just a negative thing. Yeah. And so that is a perfect example of the kind of thing we want to fully eliminate, because of the time that you could spend working with your clients on risk management, selling new clients, at home with your kids, right? Like whatever it is. That's the kind of stuff we want to be able to, give you the time to do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I think that's a good thing for everybody to understand is it is different than, say, like traditional premium finance. But what do
Yeah.
you, I'm curious, you're connected into a lot of these, whether it's carriers, different agencies, you see a lot of the different, facets of the industry right now doing what you guys are doing. And just what's your perspective on the landscape right now, the hard market that we're in, all the different macroeconomic, issues that we're dealing with? Just what's your general perspective on where all that's going and where we're sitting today?
There's so many things going on right now.
It's a big question, huh?
Again, just like the other stuff, I'm not an expert in this. I just get to be a guy on the sidelines looking. Um, but we are seeing really two big factors broadly, right? Lots of things obviously going on, but two big factors impacting the insurance market right now. One is obviously just this really hard market we're in.
Yeah.
Specifically in property. I live in California, in Northern California, and the smoke is here, right? Like it arrived 2 days ago. There were fires up in Oregon, I think northern, the top of California, and it's smoky. I woke up and my throat hurt, and so that's such a real reminder, a physical reminder of these things that we've been talking about all year. The same is true in other parts of the country right now. The East Coast was getting, hammered with a hurricane. It's this stuff is here, and the hard market is not just some intellectual thing that we have to like talk about with the people we're working with and in the industry. It's real, right? And so that's one thing, and navigating that is a challenge for everyone, right? It's a challenge for carriers who are pulling out of markets, a challenge for agents who are trying to find coverage for their insureds, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's really tough for clients, right, who need these insurance coverages to live their lives, run their businesses, feel safe. So that's one area. And then the second thing we're seeing is sort of sorry, let me cut that out. Sorry. Is the macroeconomic factors at play right now around the economy and the interest rate environment we're in. And the other thing I would say is like the and how that's changing the sort of nature and face of the distribution landscape. We're obviously seeing lots of different insurance agency, retailer roll-ups of PE firms. I think I saw lately that there's like 50 plus PE firms that now have agency investments. We're still seeing, people being every day.
Yep.
And I don't know what that means for the industry. I think there's some good and probably some bad. But it's both of those things are having a really big impact. I'm curious, what about you? You live inside of the agency. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the hardest market we've seen in a long time. We probably needed it to a degree just to reset on where we're at, but I think nobody expected it to get this hard this fast. I mean, when you're seeing 20+% increases and then also major changes in coverage, it is difficult to navigate, right? But I certainly think it will set apart those agents and those firms that are doing things the right way and, really coming at it from a risk management perspective and trying to help their clients work through it with education and communication and all of those things. And, if you've been out selling, based on price and based on, say a carrier relationship, it's going to be tough right now. And it's really going to take, thinking about things a little bit differently to work through it. But, hopefully we can get to a point where we can see some light at the end of the tunnel, provide some relief to our insureds, because that's probably one of the biggest things is you get out and you start to have these conversations and, inflation is a real deal. And then you add on a 20% insurance increase and, it's tough. So I don't know where
Really
the end is. It seems like everything that's coming out is we're in for it in 2024 as well. Just, we're not going to see much relief, but, we need a good year of underwriting results, hopefully, and that can shift. But yeah, I think it's certainly has to be the hardest market in 20 plus years, I'd imagine. 06 or 08, I suppose was around there was a pretty hard market as well. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. We don't know how long it is. We're both too young, but
Yeah,
longer than we've been around.
exactly. Yeah, longer than
Yeah.
I've been in the industry. It's been a soft market since I started in the industry, relatively. And, you don't really realize how quick it can turn until you get in a year like this where it's been, maybe 6 months and all of a sudden it's gone upside down. So,
Yeah. Totally.
but I think it
Wild.
just
Yeah.
it hits on, to me, what are those firms that have been positioning themselves to help innovate, to do things like, what you guys are bringing to the table with Ascend and constantly innovate in those areas, sets yourself up to be able to handle situations like this better, right? Because, you're not, if you've been sitting back on your hands and just letting your book renew for a while, like it's going to be tough. But those firms that are truly out innovating and working on new things are going to be fine. I mean, you're going to have some tough conversations with your clients and hopefully communicate appropriately. But if you're doing the right things, it's, you're going to uh, come out of it, I guess, at the right spot. So, what are you guys seeing from that perspective in firms you're working with, or just in general, those that are looking for innovative ways to, manage through either the hard market or just bring more value to their clients? What do you does anything come to mind that you guys are seeing that, other agents can take away and say, I should be thinking about that, or this is the way I should approach, this particular area, or anything like that?
Yeah. I actually think the things are really related. So how people are dealing with the hard market and how people are running their agencies are kind of two sides of the same coin. And right now, the sort of business challenge is the hard market, right? It'll be a
Yeah.
different challenge in some number of years. It'll be low interest rates, high interest, whatever, right?
Yeah.
There's always a different business challenge, but how you run your business allows you to better,
Yeah.
be better equipped to deal with those challenges. And so what we see is actually the folks who are best at, who are handling the hard market and the current challenges are the ones who are able to spend time there, right? It's the people who are thinking proactively and not reactively. Some examples are folks who have a really good strategy and usage and process hygiene, whatever you want to call it, around their data. Their data
Oh
is
yeah.
something they are actively sort of farming, if you will. Maybe that's a bad term. I don't know, but like using and putting to work. It's not a we do it once. It's we plant this, we maintain this, we harvest from it, we replant it, we fertilize it, we use it, we take care of it. Right. There are people who are, you constantly it will feed you, right? If you take care of it, and it'll do that on an ongoing basis. People who are doing that really well is an example. People who have good, obviously, market relationships and are not just like, hey, so and so will do me a favor, but are working efficiently with their markets through
Yeah.
integrated solutions, because
Oh, I
that
love
allows them
that
to
one.
spend
Yeah.
time with their customers, right? To create proposals that explain and spend time with them, right? To say, this is why the market is hard. Here's how we can mitigate. Here are some solutions. I'm going to go to these other markets versus doing busy work. And then the last thing on that we see is just sort of core process efficiency, right? That's an area where that's true of every business. I think over the past, call it, I don't know how many years, 10, 15,
Mm-hmm.
20, 25, right? As technology has become more applicable inside of businesses. I think in insurance, there's still a huge opportunity for core process efficiency across all of the sort of aspects of it, right? How we interact with clients, how retailers are operating, how program businesses and wholesalers are running, and then obviously how carriers run. But what we've certainly seen, I'll comment on the retail side foremost, is over the past 12 months, we have seen a far greater emphasis on process efficiency than we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
People looking at technology, people looking at better ways to do things, people looking at centralizing and optimizing in much more creative ways and deliberate ways than we've seen. That might be because, again, hard market, need to spend more time with customers. I also think because of I don't know how to say this, in a delicately, we've kind of we've kind of what's the metaphor, like let the snake loose in the room, right, by inviting all this PE money in. And even if you didn't take private equity money yourself or didn't sell, maybe your neighbor did, right? Maybe your
Yep.
competitor did. And private equity, I heard it described this way: they may not all win, right? They may not all become massive accruers, for example, but private equity also doesn't lose, right? They can't
Yep.
afford to. And so these people are going to fight tooth and nail, and they're going to have incentives and structures that force them to be efficient and sort of sharkish in ways that they haven't had to be in the past because of the now economic incentives and world in which we all operate because of that. So that's also been a huge driver, I think.
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective. I mean, obviously we've all experienced the M&A and a lot of the PE impact. I mean, we have here where I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, we have 4 or 5 of the top, what I would consider good locally run agencies, decent size, that have been bought up by large nationals or PE, right? And
Yeah.
that does have impact, but I hadn't thought about it from then operationally, how they operate those firms, um, certainly does impact that. And I think we see it from a talent perspective. I'd be, curious if some of that process focus that people have that you were talking about isn't because there just is lack of talent to hire. Folks I know are having a lot of hard times finding people that they can bring in. And that is, I would imagine, necessitating them looking at what are we doing? How are we doing it? What can we do to be more efficient? Because we don't have enough people to do the work. Right. But yeah, I think those two things that out of that you mentioned are spot on. And, I know that our industry is going to have to continue to think about how we approach these two issues, because you also made a good point in that the M&A activity hasn't slowed down for a little bit, but I'm surprised at the activity that's still out there with interest rates the way that they are and the numbers that are still being thrown out.
Yeah. But what I would say to that is, like, I agree. I'm surprised too. I think that will actually just further drive this laser focus on maximum efficiency,
Yeah.
right? And because before, if you're buying agencies, right, if you're a big PE firm, number one, you can just say 2 + 2 = 5, because together these are a more valuable business. Now in this sort of capital market where we have high interest rates and investors, the folks who are investing in PE funds are looking for more too. They're going to say 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5, it equals 4. So if you want to get 5, you got to do something here, right?
Yeah.
You can't just sort of put these together and say, great job, right? You have to say, put these together and grow EBITDA, right? That's
Yep.
how business is valued. How do you grow EBITDA? You can, as a number, you can drive revenue. Okay. That's what we all want to do. You can
Mm-hmm.
also improve your margin, right? How do you improve your margin? You get more efficient. PE is going to demand both of those things from these folks, who they've acquired. And it's going to move the entire industry in that direction because of how pervasive it is, and I think that's a really big theme that we're going to see bear out these next few years.
Yeah. I totally agree with all that. I'd be curious then your perspective being, running a company, founding a company that, I guess the way I would put it from this perspective is you're creating some of that process efficiency with your tool to allow the agency and their team to spend that time elsewhere. Right. And so I do think I agree with you that this PE money that's been coming into the industry is going to drive that efficiency mantra, right? Let's call it, or whatnot, across the industry. But I think those that win long term are the ones that figure out ways to do both, right? You do need to be
Completely.
efficient. Yeah. And you have to have efficiency in the insurance transaction, and that should be seamless, right? But you also need to build a model that builds the relationship with the client, that ultimately, that's, as independent agents, that's our biggest differentiator. We know the client,
Yep.
we can get in and do the risk management, drive results and all that, those things that you mentioned earlier. I think those are the ones that win. Not easy to do, but designing a model that figures that out are those the ones that win.
That's exactly right. I couldn't agree more. Um, and let's just take like an example. And this is what I mean. It will move the industry forward. Like 20 years ago, it was really just about sort of relationship and quality of service, right? And ability and risk management and ability to understand to create a package that works best for those businesses. And you did that by understanding those folks' businesses, by spending time with them, by knowing what was going on for them. And that will still be true. But if you're more expensive or harder to work with, or can't compete on marketing dollars because you don't have PE, right? Your competitor is stronger now, right? Than they had been. And it's not just relationship. And so you're right. You absolutely still need to win on relationship, but the sort of efficiency and how we do business, the table stakes are the ante is upped on that. And so you got to keep up there so that you can and not underinvest in so that you can focus on the relationships, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah.
But you can't do just that anymore. I would argue.
I totally agree. I think it's funny. I have a lot of these conversations and I hear a lot of people out there that, act like they know exactly the solution for everything, right? But it seems like it's one pivot or the other. It's either you have to have the most transactionally efficient model. People want ease of doing business. They don't want to talk to anybody, like blah, blah, blah. Or it's like people put their head in the sand and they're just like, I've got the best relationship with my clients and they're never going anywhere. And it's like the winner, it's somewhere in between is the model that ultimately works, right? Because I think that the insurtech from 6, 7, 8 years ago that thought they were going to displace the independent agent, learned that the independent agent has a very clear place in the relationship and the delivery with the client. But those agents need to also realize that the insurtech and the indie tech, the whatever tech solutions have a major place in the delivery of that product, right? And so I just shake my head every time I hear somebody come out with the mantra that it's one or the other, or that, there's a magic bullet. You've ultimately got to decide who's your client and then how can you do both of these things. Make the transaction as easy as possible with tools, with tech, with process changes, and then give yourself the right amount of time to develop the relationship. We heard at Indie Tech, I don't know if you were there for Ryan Hanley's presentation, but he talks a lot about he's building at Rogue a human optimized agency, and his mentality is just that I want to implement all the tech I can in my agency, but to drive the right amount of time for humans to build relationship. Right.
Yes, completely. Yeah.
And I think that's what tools like Ascend are doing. Go ahead.
No. Go for it.
Tools like Ascend are doing, and there isn't a magic bullet. You really have to get specific on what's the model you're driving, where are the inefficiencies in that transaction, and then search out the solution that you can find. Right.
Yep. I completely agree. And I think that might start. This is where I get way out of my lane. I have no idea. So go on a ride with me here. But that's when I think about, okay, if I'm sitting inside of an agency, and I'd love to hear you are doing this, you are running an agency, Elliot, so you should tell me and keep me honest. But if I'm sitting inside of an agency and I want that, human-centric, technology empowered agency, how do I start working toward that? That's a fine thing to say. What does that mean? How do I measure that? One of the things that we think about and sort of work to enable is, because we don't have any other proxy for it, you guys do, but our proxy is sort of revenue per employee inside of an agency. If I'm call it 10-person agency, how much revenue can I do in the traditional way, right? Or premium, whatever you want to call it. And where can I find technology that enables those same 10 people to do even more, right?
Yep.
Because they're not spending their time on administrative tasks or busy work or work that can be done by a computer. And instead, not only are they not spending that time, they're getting the time back to go and do things that only humans can do, right? Build relationships, understand clients, sell. And how do you sort of, what is the framework for measuring that so that you can go through and say, here are the things that we can do to drive that sort of productivity metric or whatever you want to call it forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to me, it starts with what type of a model are you trying to implement? Who are you targeting, and what are you going to do for them to bring value at the end of it? Because it's different in the model you want to drive, right? It's not the same for everybody, but I don't think everybody is intentional enough in that to be able to ask themselves and answer that question. But once you do, then you start to say, okay, the team that I have in place today, where are the areas that are causing us to spend more time off the phone with a client, for lack of a better term, not building relationships and doing some of the busy work? Again, going back to Hanley, he had a great way that he framed it. He said, if I determine that my team needs to spend 20 minutes on the phone with a client to do XYZ task, he goes, at the start, they're spending 5 minutes on the phone with the client because they need 15 to do all the stuff to get the task done, right? He goes, I wanted to flip-flop that. I wanted to get 15 minutes with the client and then have an efficient enough process that, it took 5 to do the actual task. And that was a great just frame of reference, I thought, to flip-flop those two, because same amount of time on the task, but he's flip-flopping it to the majority of it being relationship driven, getting to know the client, all those things that, like you said, humans are built to do.
Yes, that's a much better way of thinking about it. Again, you can tell we're not we don't live inside of, we're not agency owners. We're not producers. We don't know how to do it. That time spent is a great way to put it. That's awesome to hear.
Yep, and I think too, then also the experience you want to drive. Dependent upon your type of client, dependent upon, how you're going about doing it. But, if you're doing, say, a ton of agency build, to keep it to the Ascend example, like figure out a better, easier way for your clients to do agency build, and
for your team to spend less time on it.
Bingo, like that. But not everybody does agency build. That's why there just isn't a single solution. You have to have the ability to diagnose what you're trying to accomplish and what is keeping you from accomplishing that, right? The cool thing, I think, with the space we're in now is that there's a lot of tools out there, like Ascend, like other tech, all of that can solve very specific problems. And I heard something the other day that I 100% I think disagree with, but read a guy on LinkedIn or whatever posted that said, there's too many tech tools out there, and the integrations never work. They break. Like, you just should stick with one of the big guys or something and let them do it all. And I was like, I just totally disagree with that. I said, like, to me, you need to evaluate your business and determine what are the point solution that I need to go solve, right? I have this pain point, and Epic, say Applied Systems Epic, who we use for our AMS, does a lot of great things, but they don't do everything, nor do I probably want them doing everything, because I want somebody like you that's only focused on improving agency build that can say, this is my sole focus. I'm going to go do it really well, that I can bring in and implement into my process. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for us right now to do that. There's a lot of cool tech out there that are solving very specific problems that each agency has, and it's different in each agency. And you can go out there and find them and implement. Those that do are going to win.
I agree, right? I don't think there is a silver bullet. I think both on process and technology, right? You're not going to go and buy one solution and say, this is it, right? Now I'm going to be an efficient agency. Like everything, it takes work, right? There's no shortcuts. You have to understand your bit. You have to have a desire, B, understand your business, C, find the tools that fit for you. Maybe for some folks, because of the way their business is, that means that a single solution that is comprehensive does it all. And great, good for them, right? But I would say, especially as we face these challenges in the market around staffing that we've all talked about, there is a need for specialized tools, right? Especially if you're a specialized business, you have a niche, you got to be using the things that work best for your agency. I think maybe in the example you gave, this guy maybe didn't understand enough of what his specific pain points were, and then was looking for, it was almost a nail looking for a hammer, choosing tools, right? And at some point, you got to know what it is so that you can find the right hammer for your problem.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree. So,
I'm curious,
what's that?
I'm just curious, what else are you, what are you hearing from your fellow agency owners around things that are sort of keeping them up at night?
I mean, I think the biggest one is talent. Nobody can find people, it seems like. And I think that is a symptom more of talent, but also training in agencies. I think it's difficult. We're all small businesses, to have really robust training programs. And to me, that's the top issue that I hear right now, and we deal with it too. I mean, it's just hard to find people that you can get off the ground quickly and fit into your model and ultimately make you successful. So
yeah,
that's, I think, the biggest one that we see. But if folks want to learn more about Ascend, where can they learn about you guys?
Yeah, our website is useascend.com. My email is just Andrew at useascend, USEASCEND.com. You can also find us and connect with us on LinkedIn. Folks like Chris Peabody, Chris Surdy, Kaylin Despotakis are all out at conferences. So if you're interested, go say hi to one of them as well. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yep. And those two are awesome people. Chris has been on the show. So thanks, man, for the time. I appreciate it. It was a fun conversation, and look forward to seeing you guys again sometime soon here.
Yeah, appreciate it, Elliot. Thank you.
All right, man. See ya.